On April 8th, 2020, Sean R. Moorhead tweeted, "If unemployment exceeds 30% and distrust of the political process becomes widespread, there is a danger that the United States will enter what historians call the cool zone." This is the Museum of Twitter, the show where we talk about the most important tweets in the history of Twitter.com. I desperately want to stop doing topical episodes, but the news keeps happening. And this was a tweet I kinda remembered from 2020, but it has been referenced so much in the past month that I just have to do it. There's a good chance that you're completely unfamiliar with it if you're not really in politics spaces on Twitter and now Blue Sky, then yeah, it might have gone under your radar, but it is a really useful term, I feel, and so I did want to cover it. So what is the cool zone? I think an important piece to understand is when this was tweeted. This was tweeted early in the pandemic, when it looked like we might get 30% unemployment and mass distrust of the government. Obviously, we did have extremely high unemployment and a lot of distrust in the government, but I don't think we quite got to the place that this tweet is referencing, where there is a lot of social upheaval and revolutions can happen. Although Vice.com did write an article in June of 2020 called "We're All Living in the Cool Zone Now," and in it attributes a paraphrased definition of the cool zone from Matt Crispin of Chapo Trap House, which is, it's usually defined by people on Twitter as a period of history that's super cool to read about, but much less cool to live through. Basically, what Sean Moorhead was alluding to is that if unemployment got high enough and distrust of the government got big enough, then we would have the conditions to have massive social upheaval, possibly a revolution, things that are very interesting to read about in a textbook. Things that a historian 100 years from now will be like, yeah, that was a really cool period of history. Now, personally, and I feel like a lot of other people feel this way, I do not want to live in the cool zone. But I will say, I think many generations of Americans have been spoiled avoiding the cool zone. It's been many, many decades since any place on US soil has really been in the cool zone. And I know I played this clip before in another episode, but I've very much been thinking about the line in Wes Anderson's Asteroid City, where Jeffrey Wright says,
"If you wanted to live a nice, quiet, peaceful life, you picked the wrong time to get born."
I honestly think the idea that he is alluding to is sort of like a cool zone. And so yeah, we really don't have much choice in the matter. Now, this phrase was used a lot in 2020. People were talking about the situation as if we were in the cool zone. Like when there was a Target being looted in Minneapolis during the George Floyd protests, Lib Crusher said we officially entered the cool zone. Deathcore Doggy was banging his fists on the table saying, "Cool zone, cool zone, cool zone." And while many people have argued that this was a prelude to the current cool zone we're in, I would say that we are really definitely in a cool zone now, and we were maybe in sort of a tepid zone back then. I know I'm mixing definitions of cool, where, in the phrase the cool zone, it means cool like rad and not cool like cold, but whatever. Because this is so topical, let's go chronologically through some pronouncements of the cool zone in the past few months. Trash ebooks before the election put up a map of Kamala winning 270 to 268 and said, "Here's my presidential map, I call it the cool zone scenario." And although this didn't happen, I think this definitely would have resulted in some cool zone shenanigans. Like, I don't even want to think about the hell that would have descended upon Nebraska's 2nd congressional district if this happened. Just a day after the US presidential election, when Germany's three-party ruling coalition collapsed, Oscar Sims said, "Europe entering the cool zone rather more quickly after the US elections than most had anticipated." On November 25th, when Trump first announced that he was going to put 25% tariffs on everything from Canada, a thing, of course, he's walked back but is always threatening to keep doing again, What in Tarnation said, "We are entering what historians like to call the cool zone." To be clear, while I think we're in the cool zone for other reasons currently, if these tariffs actually did happen, that would definitely speed up cool zoneness. And obviously in the last week and a half, it's been proclaimed a lot. Warlock here on February 4th was quoting when the FBI turned over the names of all the employees that worked on the January 6th case and said, 2 weeks in and they're doing the Night of Long Knives, I think we're in the cool zone. And hopping over to Blue Sky, where a lot of the cool zone posting is happening since, it's the hub of neurotic people on the left, Reconstructionist asks, "I don't know what happens if people start missing social security checks," and Bear Wilner Nugent called it a highway to the cool zone. When Trump implied in Air Force One 2 days ago that they might be defaulting on some treasury debts, Algo said, "Scholars of international finance call this eventuality the cool zone." And there's obviously been a lot of discussion about what the hell happens if people in the Trump administration and Musk goons don't listen to court orders, and Leonid Baiznev basically says that what happens is that people have to do the court orders, and if they get fired or they get stopped, then marshals get called in, and if the marshals don't arrest Elon and co., then we're in the cool zone. I want to highlight all of these, and this one specifically, because I want to get at what the use of this term really is about. And I'm not saying this to cast aspersions on anyone who uses it. I think it's an incredibly human thing to do. But what it's clearly doing is viewing a catastrophe that will affect all of us with some ironic distance to make it more palatable. Because frankly, it is tragic and unthinkable to really comprehend what all of this means if all of this stuff collapses. So we kind of have to take some ironic, funny distance from it and be like, yup, this is the cool zone. I don't think anyone's under any illusions that that's what they're doing. Like, I don't think these people are being dishonest. I think that you have to call it the cool zone because to call it what it actually is like completely unpalatable. In some ways, the cool zone is like the old joke where a doctor says to a patient, I have good news and bad news. And the patient says, you know what, I've been having a bad day, give me the good news first. And the doctor says, well, the good news is you'll have a disease named after you. Thinking of the events we're going through as a cool zone is like that, because it's like, this is all gonna suck, but at least it'll be cool to read about in history. And once again, I don't think that anyone actually thinks that that's a good consolation. I think it's just a way that the brain has to think about it in order to not go crazy. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not a scoldy person normally, but I found myself in the past few weeks wanting to scold people for being ironic or detached. And I'm like, no, this is what you have to do. This is how you don't go crazy. Because I'm sitting here refreshing Twitter and Blue Sky every 20 seconds looking for a new update on how the Republic's falling apart. And of course, I'm going crazy doing that. And the people who have some ironic distance from it are not going crazy, and they're better suited to survive this moment. I know this is better suited for my therapist, but I do want people watching this to know that if you're feeling the same way I'm feeling, you're not alone. Before I go, I want to give two silly examples of when this was referenced. Luke is amazing, posted a photo of a Hershey's ice cream freezer called the Cool Zone and said, finally found the cool zone after all these years. And when Indiana University basketball had an absolute cluster of an ending of a game a couple weeks ago, Bracy Wrong quote tweeted a screenshot and said, Indiana basketball is in the cool zone. And you might laugh that off, but as a fan of the New York Knicks, I can say that a team coached by Mike Woodson is always on the verge of turmoil. Follow me for a new tweet every day and consider subscribing at patreon.com/museum of Twitter. And as we try to navigate this cool zone, I am doing a charity fundraising live stream on the 22nd to raise money for the Trevor Project, but I'm trying to get donations in before the stream so we can hit some goals. So please go to the Trevor Project and donate and send me your receipt at museumoftwitter@gmail.com. You'll be entered in to win prizes if you donate before the stream. So donate ASAP.